Following that at 2 o'clock is episode number 1 of Ira Gershwin by Michael Owen. Stay with us for these readings and more.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, May 8th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Chet Walzik. Glad you were able to join us. We'll kick it off with the weekend edition of USA Today, their cover section, and their feature story. Very relevant on this weekend. Mother's Day isn't always a celebration. Estrangement in families can carry sorrowful reminders. And this is written by Lucy Blake, who is a psychologist and researcher, and also by Madeline Mitchell from USA Today. Kendall Williams, 53, will not be seeing her youngest son this Mother's Day. But that's nothing new. Williams has been estranged from her son, who is 30, since September 2023, when she decided to cut off contact because she felt the relationship had become unhealthy and emotionally abusive. USA Today contacted her son, who declined to comment on his relationship with his mom. It wasn't an easy decision, Williams said. I absolutely love both of my sons. She is still close with her eldest son, who is 35, but she's not convinced she'll ever be in a place where she can resume a relationship with her youngest. She has written 2 books on the subject and frequently posts about her estrangement on her social media platforms. Others often judge her, but those people don't understand the whole story, she said. I had to step away from our relationship for my own well-being because I was also diagnosed with cervical cancer that same year, Williams told USA Today. I had to focus on my health instead of putting all of my focus on him, which I've done for many years. More people have come forward in recent years about setting boundaries with family members and even cutting off family members entirely. A 2025 YouGov poll found 38% of Americans are estranged from at least one member of their family and 10% are estranged from their child. But while adult children are often lauded for protecting their peace by estranging themselves from their parents or siblings, Williams said mothers are villainized for doing the same. Accusations of emotional abuse are a common reason for family estrangement, said Lucy Blake, a psychologist and family estrangement researcher from the United Kingdom. People often describe being yelled at, manipulated, and called names. Those behaviors can be just as hurtful to someone's life and well-being as physical abuse, she said. And often, emotional abuse happens when there are other kinds of abuse happening as well, she said. Don't take feeling unsafe lightly, Williams said, adding that she had a friend, Rosemary Slaughter Pate, who was murdered by her child in Florida, even after the friend reached out to authorities and tried to get the child help. Don't be like, well, that's my kid. They would never hurt me. Take it seriously. Mother's Day can be a difficult day for so many people, for so many different reasons, Blake said. Tina Gilbertson, a therapist who specializes in family estrangement, works mostly with parents who have been cut off by their children. It's more common than people think, Gilbertson said, and the strain can cause a lot of grief, especially on holidays. There's a really strong, unrealistic expectation that mothers are always nurturing for their children, no matter what, Gilbertson said. And it's an ideal that I don't think any human can live up to. Mothers often bear the brunt of keeping a family and household running, sometimes without much support, Blake said. Our expectations of mothers are so high, she said. She said it's bold and courageous for mothers like Williams to share their stories of estrangement, and she hopes it might be a real solace for other mothers out there who are experiencing the same thing. I think there is this expectation of parents literally doing anything for their children and withstanding any kind of emotional pain, Blake said. Because moms are often seen as servants to everyone around them, Williams said, the moment a mother decides to take care of herself over others, it is always frowned upon. When it comes to her son, Williams said things have gotten easier as time has gone on. She has grown accustomed to him not being part of her life. I have peace with this. There are times that I do miss my son, but I have peace right now, she said, adding that her health and mental well-being are her priority now, especially as someone who is in cancer remission. I just want moms to be able to have a voice, she said, so that mothers no longer have to suffer in silence, and they don't have to live in shame when they don't have these idealistic pictures of what their relationship with their children should be. Mother's Day posts on social media can be hard for mothers who are struggling with estrangement, Blake said, whether they or their child initiated going no contact. What we are seeing that day is not reflective of everyone's full human experience. People are rarely sharing their experiences of tension, disappointment, heartache, betrayal, loss. Though those are things everyone experiences in the relationships, Blake said, people are much more likely to post moments of togetherness and curated images of bliss on social media. But it's important to recognize that estrangement is not rare, she said. Gilbertson suggests making a plan for the day, running errands, seeing a friend, or making a nice meal. It's okay to have that grief, Gilbertson said. This is a sad time. It's a reminder of the disconnect. Assaults against Jewish Americans are on the rise. Amid several high-profile attacks against Jews globally, a new report indicates anti-Semitic assaults in the United States reached record levels in 2025. A May 6th annual audit by the Anti-Defamation League shows that while incidents it classifies as anti-Semitic decreased, physical assaults slightly rose from 196 incidents in 2024 to 203 in 2025. In 2022, the last full year before the Israel-Hamas war, there were 111 assaults. In 2025, the audit identified 3 people killed in anti-Semitic attacks, the first year since 2019 when U.S. Jews were murdered in hate crimes. When you look at the fact that assaults have increased, it speaks to why so many in the Jewish community feel vulnerable. Oren Segal, Senior Vice President of Counter-Extremism and Intelligence at ADL, told USA Today, "There is still a high level of anxiety." The audit, as well as reports from other watchdogs and government agencies tracking hate crimes against Jewish Americans, shows incidents have increased after the Hamas-led October 23 attacks in southern Israel, followed by Israel's devastating siege of Gaza. ADL's audit includes harassment, vandalism, and physical attacks. Researchers gathered data using law enforcement and news reports, but the largest source of incidents are those reported directly by alleged victims. ADL has faced scrutiny in recent years for what critics consider its conflation of pro-Palestinian activism with anti-Semitism. But outside experts said ADL's audit aligns with larger trends around hate crime, showing Jewish Americans face increasing threats and attacks, regardless of whether they support Israel. The targeting of Jewish communities, the violence against individuals for their identity has increased, said Rachel Carroll Ribas, Deputy Director of Research at the Southern Poverty Law Center, a group that monitors and seeks to combat bigotry. And we see the politicization and weaponization of it. It is shocking, she said. FBI data in August showed anti-Jewish hate crimes comprised nearly 70% of all religious-based hate crimes. Despite being only 2% of the American population, Jews made up 16% of all hate crimes in 2024, the highest level since FBI recording began. Hate crimes are historically underreported, making accurate accounting difficult, and federal data often has long delays. Carol Rivas added that decreases of nonviolent incidents in the audit appear in part attributed to fewer in-person events, leaflet or flyer distributions, or other gatherings, particularly among white nationalists and neo-Nazis. Still, she said, Southern Poverty Law Center has seen increases in conspiracy theories, tropes, and language about Jews, especially among youth on social media. Since ADL reporting began in 1979, the audit showed 2025 was the third highest year for anti-Semitic incidents on record. Incidents at Jewish institutions declined substantially, including a record decrease in bomb threats from 627 in 2024 to just 59 in 25, according to the ADL. ADL's characterization is controversial since demonstrators, including many Jewish students, said they advocated for Palestinian rights. While harassment and vandalism appeared to have decreased, ADL said physical assaults, a data point experts say is more clear, rose to new highs. The adult said at least 300 people experienced assaults, ranging from politicians to random people. In April, a man firebombed Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home hours after he and his family held a Passover Seder. In December, a suspect allegedly made anti-Semitic comments outside a New York City Jewish center before stabbing a Jewish man. ADL identified 3 deaths in 2025. In late May, a gunman fatally shot 2 Israeli embassy staffers at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. Days later, an 82-year-old Jewish woman in Colorado died from injuries when a man lobbed gasoline bombs at a pro-Israel rally. Officials said suspects in both attacks made remarks about Israel's actions in Gaza. ADL said its audit differentiates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. But since the 2023 attacks, ADL's annual audit began including certain expressions that oppose Zionism, along with violent resistance against Israel and Zionists, which the audit's methodology said could be perceived as supporting terrorism or attacks on Jews, Israelis, and Zionists. For example, the progressive news outlet Jewish Currents found instances in ADL's 2023 audit in which the pro-Palestinian protest slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," was counted among anti-Semitic incidents multiple times. Many advocates of Palestinian rights say that is a call for freedom and equality, while pro-Israel groups see the slogan as calling for the removal of Jews from modern Israel. Incidents related to Israel or Zionism made up about 45% of all cases. Brendan Lance, director of Florida State University's Hate Crime Research and Policy Institute, said the audit tries to distinguish between criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism, but it takes a broader definition, allowing for Israel-related expressions to be included. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 14 minutes after the hour, and we continue with the USA Today opening section. FDA blocked studies supporting vaccine safety. Officials at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration blocked the publication of several studies supporting the safety of widely used vaccines against COVID and shingles, a Department of Health and Human Services spokesperson said. Andrew Nixon, a spokesman for the HHS, which oversees the FDA, said the studies were pulled over concerns about their conclusions. The studies were withdrawn because the authors drew broad conclusions that were not supported by the underlying data, The FDA acted to protect the integrity of its scientific process and ensure that any work associated with the agency meets its high standards, he said in an email to Reuters. The withdrawal of these studies is the latest attempt by the health regulator and the administration to limit access to vaccines, reflecting broader policy changes under U.S. Health Secretary RFK Jr., who is a staunch critic of vaccines. The Trump administration has sharply reduced funding for vaccine research and raised questions about vaccine safety and effectiveness under the tenure of Kennedy, who has introduced sweeping changes across federal health agencies. In August last year, the HHS said it would wind down nearly $500 million in mRNA vaccine development, canceling 22 federal projects overseen by the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, a government-backed funding body. Last June, a Center for Disease Control and Prevention panel, backed by Kennedy, voted to remove mercury-based preservative thimerosal from flu shots, despite long-standing clinical evidence of its safety. British drug maker GSK markets Shingrix, a vaccine for shingles, a painful viral infection that causes blisters and rashes, while Pfizer and Moderna are the leading makers of COVID vaccines. The New York Times was the first to report this move. DNA of an elusive giant squid found in canyons. Discovery in Australia is a sign of deep sea diversity. The DNA of the elusive giant squid has been detected in deep underwater canyons off the coast of Western Australia, marking the first detection in decades, according to a newly published study. Finding evidence of a giant squid really captures people's imagination, but it's just one part of a much bigger picture, Georgia Nestor, the lead author of the study, said in a statement. The study also marks the first time a giant squid, Architeuthis dux, has been detected in Western Australia using DNA, according to Lisa Kirkendale, the Western Australia Museum's head of aquatic zoology and curator of mollusks. There's a title. It's also the northernmost record of the animal in the eastern Indian Ocean, Kirkendale stated. There are 2 other records of giant squid from Western Australia, but there has not been a sighting for over 25 years. The 2026 study, led by Curtin University in Australia, used environmental DNA to detect which species lived in deep water habitats in canyons off Western Australia's Ningaloo coast. It not only detected a giant squid, but found undetected species as well as species that might have never been discovered before, according to a news release published by the university. We found a large number of species that don't neatly match anything currently recorded, which doesn't automatically mean they're new to science, Nestor said. But it strongly suggests there is a vast amount of deep sea biodiversity we are only just beginning to uncover. Researchers surveyed the Deep Cape Range and Clotes submarine canyons in Western Australia and collected over 1,000 samples, reaching depths up to 14,800 feet during an expedition led by the museum. Here are more details about the discovery. Because researchers used environmental DNA, which is DNA that animals shed naturally into the water, to detect the sea creatures, they did not need to capture or physically see the animals. Nestor led the study, which was published by Environmental DNA as part of her doctoral studies at the university. It detected 226 species, including the giant squid, the pygmy sperm whale, and Cuvier's beaked whale, according to the news release. Researchers also detected sleeper sharks and deep-sea coral, Nestor said in a video published on the university's YouTube site. The sea creatures were detected off the coast of Western Australia in the Deep Cape Range and Clotes submarine canyons. The giant squid has captured the attention of many for over a century, from Jules Verne's 1870 novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to movies, cartoons, and other media today. It's no wonder why. The squid lives deep underwater and is rarely seen by humans. Most of what we know about the animal comes from carcasses that floated to the ocean's surface and were later found by fishermen. Because the squids are rarely spotted, little is known about them. The largest recorded squid was nearly 43 feet long and possibly weighed almost 2,000 pounds, the museum website reports. How about that? Physical Fitness Awards reinstated. Presidential test aimed to boost students' health. President Trump signed a memorandum restoring the Presidential Fitness Test Award during a White House event on May 5th, bringing back another portion of the physical fitness test millions of Americans, including me, completed or suffered through during their school years. The president signed the memorandum surrounded by school-aged children, professional athletes, and cabinet members in the Oval Office, including Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. The administration has promoted the return of the fitness test in schools as a continuation of its Make America Healthy Again efforts. It is indeed a beautiful day to celebrate America's athletic traditions and champions, physical fitness, and all those things I work so hard at on a personal basis, Trump said at the signing, making a joke about his own athletic activities. I work out so much, like about 1 minute a day, if I'm lucky, the 79-year-old president said. The Revived Award, which goes to top performers in various physical fitness tests, was created by Trump's new President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, which set out last year to develop school-based physical education programs. The memorandum coincides with the beginning of National Youth Sports and Fitness Month. The signing ceremony brings renewed attention to the Presidential Fitness Test Program, which Trump reinstated via an executive order last July. It had been in place since 1956 until former President Barack Obama decided in 2012 to replace it with a new fitness program focused on long-term student health rather than physical performance. The decades-old fitness program, now reinstated, requires students to complete a range of physical challenges that millions of Americans across generations may recall, such as completing as many sit-ups as possible within a set time frame, running a mile on a school track, or huffing through sets of push-ups. Kennedy touted the program as a way to encourage young Americans to get healthier, referencing the estimated 20% child obesity rate nationwide, and called the award a friendly competition among children. If we are going to be competitive internationally, we need to be competitive with each other, he said. Professional athletes who attended the signing included professional golfer Bryson DeChambeau, chair of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, retired golfer Gary Player, former professional hockey player T.J. Oshie, baseball pitcher Noah Syndergaard and Todd Golden, men's basketball coach for the University of Florida, Department of Education Secretary Linda McMahon, and Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth also were at the signing event. Trump later went to the South Lawn with the athletes, cabinet secretaries, and kids. The group hit some putts on the green, and the children showed off their foot racing, pull-ups, and football throwing skills. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 25 minutes after the hour, and let's slide over to the opinion section for Friday, May 8th. And we have a couple of separate pieces dealing with the same issue. First is written by Dace Potas. Mr. Potas is an opinion columnist for USA Today and a graduate of DePaul University with a degree in political science. His piece, Antitrust Ruling Helped Ground Spirit Airlines. In the wake of crippling jet fuel costs, Spirit Airlines has gone out of business, disrupting passengers' travel plans, leaving 15,000 employees facing uncertainty and creating a major void in the budget travel market. Progressive politicians have already rushed to blame President Trump. After all, his war in Iran helped trigger the spike in jet fuel prices that pushed struggling airlines even closer to the brink. But Spirit's downfall cannot be blamed on fuel prices alone. Under the Biden administration, Spirit had a merger in place with JetBlue Airways that could have offered the company a financial lifeline. Instead, progressive antitrust ideology blocked the deal in 2024. Rather than allowing Spirit to consolidate into a stronger entity, Democrats left the airline stranded in financial limbo until the latest crisis finished it off. Spirit's collapse might not have been entirely preventable, but Democratic lawmakers helped ensure it by blocking the airline's merger with JetBlue. The recent spike in jet fuel prices was merely the final, albeit crushing blow. Spirit had been financially unstable since the COVID pandemic. The company filed for bankruptcy protection, explored multiple survival strategies, and ultimately accepted a merger offer from JetBlue that could have provided a path forward. Instead, the Biden administration sued to block the deal on antitrust grounds. A federal judge agreed, cutting off what was arguably Spirit's best remaining lifeline. In hindsight, JetBlue itself might not have ultimately been in the financial position to absorb Spirit's mounting debts, particularly amid soaring fuel prices. But that was not why congressional Democrats opposed the merger. They blocked it because they feared it might actually work. We don't need yet another big merger in the already highly consolidated airline industry, said Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, argued in 2022 on social media. When airlines get bigger, passengers face higher prices, more delays, and fewer choices. Warren and her allies urged the Biden administration to block the merger in the name of preserving competition in the airline industry. That argument would carry more weight if it actually fit. Spirit was precisely the kind of struggling company for which mergers can serve a legitimate economic purpose, preserving valuable assets, routes, and market share by folding them into a stronger business capable of sustaining operations. But for progressives like Biden and Warren, ideological opposition to corporate growth often overrides practical economic realities. Instead, Americans got the worst of both worlds: no merger, no orderly consolidation, and ultimately no Spirit. Consumers now have one fewer budget airline option altogether. Those who warned that the JetBlue merger would reduce competition have little to say now that Spirit's outright collapse has done exactly that. Spirit's planes, airport slots, and other assets will likely be absorbed eventually by more profitable competitors. But there is a major difference between structured consolidation and chaotic collapse. In this version, passengers face widespread disruptions, employees face lost jobs, and the industry absorbs unnecessary turmoil that a merger could have softened. Many on the left wrongly treat antitrust law as a tool to stop companies from becoming too large in principle. But antitrust legislation was never intended to punish scale for its own sake. Its purpose is to prevent monopolies and protect genuine competition. The airline industry, despite consolidation, is far from a monopoly. Progressives like Warren frequently demonize the big four airlines, American, Delta, Southwest, and United, for controlling roughly 75% of the market. But that statistic alone ignores an important reality. Those four airlines still actively compete against one another, each holding market shares generally ranging from about 15 to 20%. Spirit and JetBlue, meanwhile, occupied much of the remaining market space. Their merger would have created the nation's fifth largest airline with approximately 10% market share, hardly the profile of a monopolistic giant. Yet, progressive lawmakers opposed the merger not because it threatened to create a monopoly, but because many have adopted a broader ideological hostility toward consolidation itself, regardless of whether that consolidation may actually strengthen competition. Now, Spirit Airlines is out of business, and much of its market share, aircraft, and other assets will likely end up in the hands of larger airlines with the capital to absorb them anyway. The government has a legitimate role in preventing monopolies, but when antitrust policy becomes overly ideological and disconnected from economic reality, it can create serious unintended consequences. Spirit's demise should serve as a warning about the risks of overly aggressive antitrust intervention, but in all likelihood, those responsible will focus solely on Trump's role in fuel costs, with little self-reflection about how their policies may have contributed. And we have another opinion piece on this particularly interesting development, written by Kenneth Williams Jr., who is an entertainment journalist, cultural commentator, and media consultant, whose work focuses on the intersection of pop culture and modern media. His piece is entitled "Budget Air Travelers Relied on Spirit. So what will we do now?" Spirit Airlines saved my life more times than I can count. I don't mean in a perilous, gravity-defying way reminiscent of the latest Marvel film, but in terms of expanding my dreams. From the multiple trips to Disney World every spring break during childhood with my family, to simply serving as a means of transportation for a few transformative moments that defined my early adulthood, the airline holds some of my greatest memories. In reflecting on these memories, given the recent news of its dismantling, I realized just how crucial budget-friendly airlines are to the average American. Despite the constant criticism of airlines like Spirit, they play a vital role in the infrastructure of society by providing affordable access to travel for those of us who are not the wealthy few. In its absence, I now wonder, what does this mean for the rest of us? As a child, I fondly remember the excitement and wonder of arriving at the Orlando airport and seeing all the Disney merchandise and advertisements. I also remember that same excitement with a smidge of my mother's parental pride in watching me partake in the luxury of travel that wasn't afforded to her when she was young. She told me years later that it was important for her to give me those experiences so that by the time my dreams matched my reality, I would not have imposter syndrome. Those formative experiences truly shaped the way I view travel, class, and access. If affordable airlines like Spirit did not exist, I would likely not have gotten those opportunities. Now that such a scenario is the reality, I worry that the effects will be far more grave than we realize, especially when it comes to working class people whose access to luxuries like vacations can hinge on changes in the price of travel. In graduate school, I worked a litany of jobs for quick and steady cash. I was a graduate assistant, surviving on $750 every 2 weeks, while also working as an Uber driver. By the time of the final semester of my graduate program at Michigan State, I was emotionally and mentally burnt out. With only a few dollars to spare and the remnants of a previous refund check, I decided to book a cheap Spirit Airlines ticket to Houston to see my college bestie and couch surf at her home for spring break. We spent the week at the Houston Rodeo. She took me to Beyonce's childhood home, and those invaluable memories remain with me to this day. It might not sound glamorous to you, but for a broke graduate student with nothing to my name but limited funds alongside a hope and a dream, it was everything. That trip is one of the reasons why this entire situation feels so dismal. Budget-friendly air travel has often been a way for working-class people to not only see the world, but simultaneously see our highest selves. It provides access to a multitude of global destinations while also helping to broaden how we see our place in the world. The disappearance of spirit also speaks to a larger issue, how those of us who don't have astronomical net worths or a track record seem disposable in our system. When we take away people's resources to dream bigger than their circumstances and limit the way in which they connect to the world around them, it is a fundamental endorsement of an economy that continues to enrich a small few, while the rest of us watch our quality of life erode. While we are in the early stages of this monumental loss, we are in the late stages of capitalism, in which painful disruptions will continue to be borne most heavily by those least equipped to deal with them. It breaks my heart to witness the cruel comments that make light of such a loss for many people, especially working-class Americans. There are so many of us who live paycheck to paycheck and can barely afford the simple necessities in life. At a time when rights, laws, and policies that directly enhance the lives of marginalized communities in this country are being rolled back, the pilfering of our joy is a disgusting reminder of the era we live in. And if the ability to travel becomes only the right of the wealthy, I fear we have already lost the plot. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 37 minutes after the hour. And we slide over to the USA Today Money section, which on every Friday turns into the USA Today Travel and Tourism section. So, we take what they give us. And we have a feature story entitled Last Call. And this is written by Nathan Diller, a USA Today travel editor. Last Call. Worst part of their cruises are going viral. Who are the pier runners? Meredith Williams is a seasoned cruiser, taking about 7 or 8 each year. But even she has nearly missed her ship on occasion. The 38-year-old booked an excursion to the Puerto Princesa Subterranean River National Park in the Philippines during a December 2024 cruise through a third-party provider after it was sold out through the cruise line. The site was a roughly 2-hour drive away and crowded with other visitors, resulting in delays. And then I started to get really concerned, and I was talking to our guide, and I'm like, hey, are we going to have time to do this? Because it's a 2-hour drive back. And what if there's traffic? What if we get a flat tire, she recalled in an interview with USA Today. All the worst case scenarios are going through my head. They got stuck in line behind other boats on their way out, and she and about 7 other passengers were about 30 minutes late returning to the Norwegian Cruise Line ship. Williams documented the frantic drive and brisk walk back as other guests looked on from balconies in a video on her YouTube channel. My watch has been recording my heart rate all day and thinks I've been working out because of how anxious and stressed I've been, she said in the video. The tour provider, Travel Cart Tours and Services, did not immediately respond to USA Today's request for comment. Norwegian did not issue a comment. The Philadelphia resident is not alone. Many videos of pier runners, guests rushing to return to a cruise ship before it departs, have gone viral on social media and gathering on outer decks to watch stragglers has become a kind of pastime. But late returns can have serious implications for both cruise lines and travelers. And here's what we know. Joanna Cuther, a travel agent and owner of Portside Travel Consultants, said she has seen pier runners since she began taking cruises in the late 1980s. You would always see the last minute people coming on board, she said. And the funny thing is, you would wait for the announcements. That was the big thing, you know. They would start announcing people's names to see if they were on board. So it's always been a thing. Back then, Cuther said, the spectacle was relatively contained to cruise guest circles. It wasn't as widespread as it is now because of TikTok and social media, she noted. The videos have become a subject of debate. Some people think it's hysterical, and other people are like, it's horrible. You're calling them out. It's not nice to film them, she said. And then the rest of the people are like, it's on you. If you're going to be running for the pier, people are going to be on their balconies. Cuther and Williams both said some of the footage has also appeared to be staged. I feel like it just used to be a funny thing for people on the cruise, but now people want, that social media flex, Cuther added. They want to be able to film it and post it. Cruise ships are on tight schedules, and passengers could be left behind if they don't get back on board by the stated all-aboard time. Oftentimes, there's such strict rules that it's so expensive to dock, Cuther said. Other ships could also be coming in. Before departing, cruise lines collect missing guest travel documents like passports from their staterooms if they didn't bring them ashore to give to the port authority. That way, the passengers can reach the next port or home depending on how much time they have left on their sailing. Passengers are typically responsible for their own travel arrangements in those cases. Travel insurance will not usually be much help. Typically, travel delay coverage / missed connection coverage is due to a delay of a common carrier, such as an airline delay or a cancellation for a covered reason, which causes you to miss your cruise or tour departure. Megan Walsh, director of product at Insure My Trip, previously told USA Today. An excursion supplier not getting you back to your cruise in time is typically not covered. There are some steps travelers can take to avoid running down the pier or ending up in a viral video. Cruise ships post all aboard times and daily planners that are delivered to staterooms on the Cruise Lines app. Cuther recommends guests set a reminder on their phones and keep time zones in mind as well. There's 3 times, Cuther said. There's your local time, there's the local time of the port that you're in, and then there's ship time. You always have to be on ship time. Travelers should keep in mind that the latter two aren't always the same. Booking shore excursions through the cruise line could be more expensive, but they are also often a safer bet to avoid late returns. The ships not only have a record of where those guests are, but operators ensure they get back on time. But third-party vendors may also offer guarantees to get guests back to the ship on time or to their next port of call at no added cost. When booking independently, Williams recommends sticking to reputable operators. Reviews and social media posts from other travelers may be helpful while doing research. It doesn't hurt to be prepared for the worst. Williams always brings a portable phone charger, a photocopy of her passport, and, in the case of water-based excursions, a waterproof pouch to hold her phone, cash, credit card, and other belongings. If travelers are taking medication they can't go more than 24 hours without, Williams recommends bringing at least 2 extra days' worth. Cuther suggests getting back to the ship half an hour to an hour before the all-aboard time. Anything can happen, she said. A couple of years before her trip to the Philippines, Williams got stuck in traffic in Bermuda on the way back from an excursion booked through Norwegian and arrived 45 minutes after the all-aboard time. Had she not been on a cruise line-sponsored excursion, she fears she would have been left behind. But instead, they waited, and the second that we were all back on the ship, the gangway went up, and we were sailing away. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour, and we continue with the Money, Travel, Tourism section. Regulators are using incidents to better safety. This is a piece by Zach Winter, another USA Today travel editor. 2 Southwest Airlines jets passed within 500 vertical feet of each other over Nashville on April 18th. A couple of days later, over at JFK International, 2 commercial flights also nearly avoided a collision. That's not to mention the 2 high-profile crashes in recent years. The fatal collision between an American Airlines jet and an Army helicopter in 2025, and the recent fatal ground collision at LaGuardia International. Perhaps because of their rarity, aviation incidents or near accidents tend to generate headlines and hand-wringing. But for many travelers, such incidents raise an important question. Are these avoided collisions a good sign that the aviation safety system is working, or warning beacons that another fatal disaster is looming on the horizon? An analysis of federal data by Aviator DB, an aviation registry tracking companies, shows a 61% increase in near mid-air collisions since 2019. Experts say the spike isn't entirely surprising, but added it's important for regulators to take it seriously. Compared to 10 or 20 years ago, we have many more aircraft in the sky. Lori Garrow, a civil engineering professor specializing in aviation at Georgia Tech, told USA Today, "The more planes you have, the more opportunity there are for needing conflict resolution." Mary Schiavo, the Department of Transportation's former Inspector General, said that collisions avoided at the last minute are better than the alternative, but still not an optimal outcome. We continue to have these problems where you have go-arounds, which means they put too many planes too close together, she said. I still see it as a warning sign because we have had so very many. The fact that we are having them after we've had 2 major collisions, those are warning signs, and that's what the statistics are for. Schiavo said that the aviation industry is good at learning from past incidents, but that's not always enough. To wait until there are deaths when you see all these bad statistics is just ridiculous, she said. The recent fatal accident at LaGuardia highlighted how reactionary the aviation safety program can be. Schiavo said that for a long time, regulators have touted technology that can warn pilots and ground vehicle operators alike when they are on a collision course. During the LaGuardia accident, an Air Canada regional jet struck a fire truck that was crossing the runway where the flight was landing, killing both pilots. Federal Aviation Administration regulations and the airport's own guidelines had not required the truck to have equipment that would have alerted air traffic controllers to its presence on the runway, although the FDA said it had issued an alert encouraging the use of transponders on all airport vehicles last year. You can bet that LaGuardia will be making mandatory, the FDA will make it mandatory, that they put transponders on all fire trucks, but it shouldn't take 2 young pilots dying to make that happen. That mindset has to change, Schiavo said. The FAA also said it notified operators of available federal funds to help with transponder installation in last year's alert. Garrow agreed that proactively requiring the adoption of new technology is a key step to improving aviation safety. Investment in new technologies, making sure communication protocols as well as new technology are in place. I would love to see investments in that to help bring those technologies up to speed and make them more common, she said. Schiavo, the National Transportation Safety Board, and others have also warned that the FAA does not always analyze accident data in a timely manner. In its final report on the fatal mid-air collision between an Army Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines regional jet, the NTSB cited the absence of effective data sharing and analysis among the FAA, aircraft operators, and other relevant organizations as a major contributing factor. The FAA told USA Today in a statement that it is making progress on upgrading and improving the aviation safety system. In the last year, the FAA took two critical steps to further improve the safety of the flying public through the National Airspace System, or NAS. We expanded the use of artificial intelligence to analyze safety data, and we created an integrated safety management office. We are also delivering a brand new air traffic control system to the American flying public, and that includes installing more airport surface surveillance systems, which enable air traffic controllers to track and identify aircraft and vehicles on runways and taxiways in all weather conditions. The NTSB pointed to past comments by Jennifer Homendy, its chair. Homendy has previously criticized the FDA and legislators for failing to act on the agency's recommendations. According to the FAA, its use of AI in data analysis is helping improve safety across the national aviation system. The agency has used AI in recent months to help identify trouble spots where helicopters and airplanes are likely to come into conflict. During the government shutdown in October 2025, the FAA also used AI to help implement traffic control initiatives. We used AI to rapidly scan a very large volume of safety reports for indicators of system stress associated with shutdown conditions, a statement from the FAA said. This identified a set of reports pointing to elevated risk, including increased traffic management and weather avoidance reroutes, additional surface congestion at multiple airports, and frequency congestion consistent with combined air traffic control positions under reduced staffing. The result was that the agency was able to ease the workload of air traffic controllers at a particularly stressful time. A lack of fatalities is a good baseline, but Schiavo said that can't be the only metric by which aviation safety is measured. But, she said, there's also no agreed upon definition of what qualifies as safety in flying. All we can say is that in general, evaluated on a per mile of transportation basis, 100 miles in a car versus 100 miles in an airplane, the airplane wins. But can we say, is it safe? The FAA has never defined that, Schiavo said. The FAA's line is, flying is safe when we say it's safe. But we know they don't look at the data, and we know they don't require the equipment, and we know they haven't filled the positions to analyze that data. The NTSB criticized the FAA in the wake of the DC crash for not allocating its staff in a way that could have helped avoid the dangers and possibly avoid the collision. Garrow said that aviation is the safest mode of transportation, but she understands why the traveling public has questions after high-profile incidents. One of the NTSB's major recommendations after the crash at DC was that aircraft be required to use a system that broadcasts their location in national airspace known as ADS-B. Congress has not yet passed legislation that would make this change, although competing versions of aviation safety bills are being considered in both houses. The investigation into the LaGuardia crash is still in its early stages, but the NTSB will likely recommend the adoption of other warning systems in its final report as a result of that accident. Still, Schiavo and Garrow both said that the aviation system would be safer overall if steps like those were taken proactively rather than only in the aftermath of major incidents. It is possible to do that. That's what is so irritating. We have the equipment. It can be mandated, but it's not, Schiavo said. You are listening to reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, May 8th, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Chet Walczyk, and I wish you the best on this very special weekend. Best wishes to all the moms, grandmothers, godmothers, stepmothers, and other moms that take up the care of all of us. We wish you good health. We thank you for your work, and God bless all of our mothers. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to seeing you the next time around.
we'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. So now we've got the life section, which is section B. And here's a story from streaming on the first page. Sally Field connects with creatures of all kinds, from Brian Truitt. Plenty of A-list partners have shared the screen with Sally Field over the years, from Burt Reynolds, Tom Hanks, and Robin Williams to Julia Roberts, Shirley MacLaine, and Dolly Parton. Add an octopus to that list. Remarkably Bright Creatures, streaming May 8th on Netflix, stars Field as Tova, a night cleaner at an aquarium who's isolated herself from her life after the grief of losing her son many years ago, and more recently her husband. She talks at length to her best friend, a giant Pacific octopus named Marcellus, and Marcellus, voiced by Alfred Molina, addresses her in his own way with an internal monologue. Marcellus seems to listen, and who knows, my dog seems to listen, Field says. I do know that human beings have a profound connection with creatures of all forms. They have helped us live our lives. We have to appreciate them, especially ocean creatures. We may lose them if we don't pay attention. An adaptation of Shelby Van Pelt's best-selling book, Creatures, is Field's first major movie role since 2023's 80 for Brady. The 79-year-old legend has won 2 Best Actress Oscars for 1979's Norma Rae and 1984's Places in the Heart, and isn't stopping now, acknowledging there's some stuff in the works. USA Today talks with Field about aging in Hollywood, being a celebrity, and what's on tap for her 80th birthday. This interview has been edited for length and clarity. Question: Remarkably Bright Creatures tackles grief and loss. For the more emotional scenes, do you pull from a similar place that you did for, say, Steel Magnolias? Or does the inspiration change over time? Answer: Well, if it didn't change over the years, then it would be old hat by now. When I did Steel Magnolias, for instance, I was in my early 40s. Now I'm almost 80. Your life experience changes. And if you're calling on old things, it's going to be pretty rote. You always have to be in the now. You always have to find something that is alive in you at this moment. Do you have a way to cope with grief in your own life when it pops up? Well, luckily, I don't have a lot of dark grief around me other than the fact that I'm worried about the world right now, and I'm worried about my country right now. I'm sort of grieving about that, but that doesn't help anything either. We all have to stand up and do something and be motivated to speak out and be responsible and resist, and that's the truth. Do people have one thing they do if they're grieving? I don't have any one thing. You pick yourself up. You dust yourself off. You figure out how to do something productive to heal. What does it mean for you to get such a rich role like Tova in your career now? It's the same thing I felt like to get a rich role when I was in my 20s. I didn't have a rich role when I was in my 20s. Actually, come to think of it, I had a rich role when I was in my late 30s, and then 40s and 50s and 60s, and some of the 70s. But it's always been hard. I'm female, and I'm an older female, so it's always very hard to find characters that are worth leaving a piece of your soul behind. Because that's what it is. Except your soul isn't left behind. Your soul is actually enriched by it. You're taught by characters like this, by stories like this, as an actor. That's the good part of being an actor. But it will always be hard for me to find things, and it certainly is getting nothing but harder. I grew up watching Gidget reruns with my grandma and also was mildly obsessed with Smokey and the Bandit. Do you find different generations coming up to you for different things as they're introduced to your movies and shows? No, I'm in New York, which I am a lot. In my little apartment, and whether I'm there or in Southern California, I just look like an old lady. I usually have my Dodger cap on, Hiei Dodgers, and braids and a ponytail, and my old sweats, walking my dog. Usually I don't have a flood of people that come up. Maybe they notice me, but I have been a celebrity my entire life, since I was 17. When that happens to you, and you're sort of taken out of the human race, so to speak, I don't get to be a normal person in the produce section. I have a habit of not looking up at people's faces, because if you do, then they look at your face. So I think I have formed a defense mechanism, a little like Tova's defense mechanism, to keep myself hidden away, protected. I'm very much a hermit. I've always been that, but I think that's only gotten worse as the years have gone on. Do you have any big plans for when you turn 80 this November? I thought maybe I'd climb Mount Everest. Maybe it's a good time to do that. No, I don't have any plans for anything except getting through today would be good, and tomorrow might even be nice. By the middle of next week, I'll start to have a plan. Here's a story for movies, which is on the second page. Adam Scott even scared himself in Hokum, from Brian Truitt. We're discussing light spoilers for the movie Hokum, in theaters now, so beware if you want to go in completely cold. For Adam Scott, there's nothing like watching his new supernatural horror film Hokum, with a crowd of people screaming and having a great time. And he even cops to the frights working on him, too. It's profoundly scary, the Severance actor says, and it really sneaks up on you in a really fun way. Directed by Damian McCarthy from Oddity, Hokum stars Scott as prickly author Oom Bauman, who ventures to Ireland to scatter his parents' ashes near a remote hotel where they honeymooned. He's told of a witch that haunts the honeymoon suite, which is cordoned off from guests. Oom immediately calls it Hokum, but when a hotel employee, Florence Ordesh, who did him a kindness, goes missing, he becomes determined to find out what happened to her, while also facing the ghosts of his own past. Oom faces plenty of freaky sights and sounds, from dead bodies and claustrophobic dumbwaiters to a creepy kids show that will give you the willies. But in real life, when you're making the thing, it's not necessarily scary because you're on a sound stage and everybody's safe, Scott says. His most spine-tingling moment came later when doing a post-production recording session with McCarthy. In a scene where Oom is walking across the honeymoon suite, McCarthy needed Scott to record his breathing. As they were recording, Oom goes through a doorway, and suddenly the ghost of his dead mother appears walking behind him, which made me audibly yelp out loud and jump, Scott recalls. And McCarthy's just sort of like, oh, okay, well, that's an interesting choice, but all I need is just like breathing sounds. The fact that something that I'm really terrified me there for a second and completely caught me off guard really says something. Known mainly as a comedic actor, Scott has dabbled in horror throughout his career. One of his earliest movie roles was in 1996 Hellraiser Bloodline. It wasn't because I was a Hellraiser's fan, he says. It was because it was a job that I got. I don't think that I had seen a Hellraiser movie. When it comes to his own horror taste, the one Scott says he connects to the most are great movies first and great horror movies second. Stuff like John Carpenter's The Thing, Heredity, The Shining, and An American Werewolf in London. All these movies have these great character-driven stories that would stand on their own, whether or not they are horror. And here's another one from streaming. FOMOnance fuels the fun for Hacks co-stars, from Aaron Jensen. Spoiler alert, this story contains details from episode 7 of season 5 of Hacks, now streaming on HBO Max. Those who have shipped Deborah and Ava, your time has come. Before concluding its 5th and final season May 28th, writers of HBO Max's Hacks, Thursdays 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, gave viewers a glimmer of what a love affair between comedy comeback queen Deborah Vance, played by Jean Smart, and her millennial bisexual writer Ava Daniels, Hannah Einbender, could be like. The episode was so much fun, Einbender says beside Smart in an interview with USA Today. It was so funny. I thought they handled it beautifully. I thought it was true to the reality of the characters while also delivering what fans wanted. In episode 7, Deborah is anxious about what to wear to her career-defining show at Madison Square Garden. With the help of her psychic, she settles on a white jumpsuit with a gauzy long-sleeve top that Carol Burnett wore on the series finale of her eponymous variety show in 1978. Designer Bob Mackey, who costumed Burnett for her show, makes a cameo and hints to Deborah that a rival comic owns the look. Kelly Kilpatrick, Cherry Jones, hates Deborah for reasons the latter can't recall. Leave it to Ava to refresh her memory. You were pretty mean to her after she came out at the VMAs, Ava says of Kelly, who is a lesbian. I believe the exact quote was, she should go back into the closet and pick something else. Deborah also slighted Kelly's talk show. Deborah decides to apologize to Kelly at a restaurant with hopes of getting the outfit. When Ava interrupts to bring Deborah her cell phone, Kelly mistakes Ava for Deborah's girlfriend and has a new understanding of her foe. No wonder you've been so bitter and frustrated and jealous all these years, Kelly says, before inviting the couple to the Montecito home she shares with her wife, Monica, played by Leslie Bibb. Ava agrees to feign being in a relationship for $1,000 and lays it on thick for their audience of 2. The connection was undeniable, Ava tells Kelly and Monica while recounting how she and Deb met. But I think our spark is in our fighting, the way we pick her. It comes into play in the bedroom a lot as well. Then Ava asks for a kiss. Deborah pecks her before reluctantly giving in to more passionate smooches. Later, Deborah decides to come clean to Kelly and Monica, but they won't have it. Deb, Kelly begins, after a full weekend of watching you and Ava, I think it's pretty obvious that you're in a relationship. Miraculously, Kelly gives Deborah the jumpsuit. It just was classic Hacks, Einbender says. That's what I love about the season, Smart says. We got to be really silly again, after being kind of serious last season. In addition to a FOMOnance with Ava, Deborah had a brief fling earlier in the season with much younger rock star Nico Hayes, played by the summer, I Turned Pretty breakout Christopher Briney. But Smart wouldn't even flirt with the idea of ranking this season's kisses. I do not kiss and tell, she says. Series co-creator Jen Statsky says writers had the Ava and Deborah storyline in our minds for a while. And it felt like season 5, when we finally got to this place in the relationship, was the right place to do it. At this point in the series, there's just so much history between these two to draw on, Statsky says. When they get into a fight and joke about having hit her or sued her, there's so much history here. There really would be so much for them to unpack in couples therapy. They should go twice a week. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time's 32 minutes after the hour. Music. Rolling Stones Speak in Tongues, from Patrick Ryan. The Rolling Stones are speaking in foreign tongues. On May 5th, the rock icons announced their 25th studio album, Foreign Tongues, out July 10th, which they teased with two bluesy new songs, rollicking lead single In the Stars and the tempestuous Rough and Twisted. That same day, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ronnie Wood touched down in Brooklyn at the Whalen in Williamsburg for an afternoon launch party, greeting fans at the Carnivorous historic former bank-turned-event space. Inside, projections of the Stones' famous Tongue and Lips logo danced across the ceiling, and guests were served a selection of past hors d'oeuvres and cocktails poured with the group's signature Crossfire Hurricane rum. The band joined superfan Conan O'Brien for a freewheeling, roughly half-hour conversation in which they discussed the recording process and how they stay vital more than 60 years in the Stones' career together. O'Brien began by asking Jagger, 82, how he sounds exactly as he did when he was in his 20s. Well, I was taking a lot of drugs back in 1968, Jagger quipped. This is an intervention, by the way, O'Brien volleyed back. Oh, God, not another one, Jagger exclaimed, throwing his hands in the air. No, the secret is practice, I think. It's simple. Richards, 82, meanwhile, spoke at length about he comes up with his classic guitar riffs. You can't write them. You can't force them. They come to you, Richards said into his microphone, before apologizing to the crowd that most of his responses were inaudible. I keep waving this thing around. I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Jagger is known for his athletic concert performances, and he shared that often will extend to the studio, where he'll carry around a hand mic and walk around while recording. Foreign Tongues is the band's first album since 2023's Hackney Diamonds, which won the Grammy Award for Best Rock Album. The new album was recorded in just less than a month in London, where the group reunited with the Hackney Diamonds producer Andrew Watt. It includes a special appearance from original drummer Charlie Watts, captured during one of his final recording sessions before his death in 2021 of squamous cell carcinoma at age 80. The song is called Hit Me in the Head. It's real fast, like a punk rocker, Jagger described. Charlie plays great. It's a super fast song. Steve Jordan, the band's current drummer, is otherwise featured on the album. He was recommended by Charlie Wood, age 78, explained. Guest artists on Foreign Tongues include Paul McCartney, Steve Winwood, The Cure's Robert Smith, and Chad Smith of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. O'Brien asked whether any of their collaborators were nervous to hop on a Stones song. Paul really wanted to jump in there. He was next door at the studio, Jagger recalls. There was no intimidation from Paul. He wanted to tick that box, Wood joked, chuckling to himself. He said, now I can say I've played with the Rolling Stones. Wow. The one-liners flew fast and furious throughout the talk. O'Brien compared Jagger's gold and apricot-colored jacket to Willy Wonka, jesting that he chose not to wear it himself. That would have been a disaster, Jagger playfully fired back. They also showed off Nathaniel Mary Quinn's eye-catching album cover art, which is an amalgamation of the band's faces. I call it Mr. Ugly, Jagger joked. Wood quipped, it's made to look like Mick. Much of the conversation was about how the Stones continue to challenge themselves and are more ambitious than ever on the 14-track Foreign Tongues. The Stones is a rock band, but the Stones also has the ability to do ballads and country music and dance music, Jagger said. It's not just stuck in one kind of style. We've loved all kinds of music over our lives, so we express that in the way we record it and what songs we play. Now we've got the sports section, which is section C. Only one NBA team can stop the Knicks in the East. New York takes a 2-0 series lead over the 76ers. From Lorenzo Ray. It's the second quarter, and Karl Anthony Towns is perched on his padded seat at the end of the New York Knicks bench. He's hunched over, staring at the floor. He's shaking his head now, burying it in a towel. He mutters to himself. It's the second quarter, and Towns is in foul trouble. Towns is back. It's the third quarter now, and he hasn't missed a shot. He has embraced his new role as point center, a role that has helped the Knicks become the most dangerous team in the NBA Eastern Conference. Towns has been slashing to the rim, zipping passes to his teammates when the defense collapses on him. He has been lacing trail threes. But Towns has picked up his fourth foul, so he's back at the end of the bench. His coach has just told him that he won't return to the floor until the fourth quarter. To be ready, towel in hand, Towns is shaking his head. It's very late in the fourth quarter, and Towns is checking out of the game for the last time. Coated in sweat, he's extending his hand out to courtside fans. He stops to dap up Coach Mike Brown. He heads to the end of the bench and hugs Jose Alvarado. After just missing out on what would have been his third triple-double of the playoffs, Towns and the Knicks scrapped their way to an uneven 108-102 victory over the Philadelphia 76ers on May 6th. Now, with a 2-0 lead in the Eastern Conference semifinals, this game proved two things. No team in the world has been playing better basketball than New York. The only team in the East that can stop the New York Knicks is the New York Knicks. Entering the night, they had won their previous 4 playoff games by 135 points, most ever in NBA postseason history. They also became the first team in NBA history to win 3 consecutive playoff games by at least 25 points. They have continuity and balance. They have a trio of demons in OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart, the architects of the best perimeter defense in the East. They can ignite on offense with Towns and Jalen Brunson. But New York falls into foul trouble frequently. There are times, particularly late in close games, when the ball can stagnate on offense in the hands of Brunson. Every now and then, they get careless with the ball and commit unnecessary turnovers. This is all to say that, right now, this New York squad is the best the city has seen in a quarter century, and its best bet to break a 52-year title drought. But to do that, the Knicks must avoid the self-imposed mistakes, the avalanche of undisciplined fouls. I don't ever want to lose the physicality, Towns told reporters after the game. That's something that has done us well in the last game. I'll look at the tape and I'll get better, more disciplined. I don't want to put my team in that position again. I got to do a better job. In the second half, the Knicks responded and played smarter. They didn't fall for the bait and adapted to the style of officiating, avoiding careless swipes at the ball. More important, that translated to offense, where they settled into their regular offensive rhythm and played with pace. In the first half, New York was called for 14 personal fouls. After intermission, that number dropped to 6. But that first half came after a game 1 in which Philadelphia took double the free throws, 34, that New York shot, 17. Just to show how dangerous the team can be when it plays with urgency and discipline, just look to the final minutes of Game 2, when New York, which was facing a 3-point deficit, closed the game on a 12-3 run. Staying disciplined, those are the details. I'm talking about what we have to pay attention to, Brunson said after the game, because it can be a difference maker. Towns finished the game with an ultra-efficient 20 points on 6 of 8 shooting and nearly recorded his third triple-double of the postseason, adding 10 rebounds and 7 assists. Yet he played just 27 minutes 24 seconds, and his impact was reduced somewhat because of the foul trouble. Brunson led all New York players with a steady 26 points. Anunoby added 24 points. Now, this series flips to Philadelphia, where the 76ers may get the return of star center Joel Embiid. For New York to close Philadelphia out, it will need its players to be available and on the floor, and it will need to stick to its identity. Because it's currently constructed, there's no other squad right now out east that can threaten this team. In Race to Tip Off, some already 2026 winners. From Sydney Henderson, Megan Hall, and Mitchell Northam. The 2026 WNBA offseason has been a sprint. After the league and union reached a collective bargaining agreement in March, after months of negotiations, the offseason was condensed into a weeks-long period that featured an expansion draft, college draft, free agency, and training camp in April. The fast-paced offseason presented some unique challenges for each team's front office, with Phoenix Mercury general manager Nick Urin summing it up with this thought. Few other leagues have gone through what this league just went through in terms of doing everything in a 3 to 4 week period. USA Today Sports breaks down the winners and losers of the truncated offseason. The winners, Dallas Wings. They finished 10-34 last season, tied for last place with the Chicago Sky, despite a sensational Rookie of the Year campaign from number 1 overall pick, Paige Buckers. The Wings used their 2026 number 1 pick to select UConn's Azzi Fudd to improve the team's perimeter shooting after finishing second to last in three-point percentage, 30.4 last year. The Wings also allowed the second most opponent points per game last season and made moves in free agency to shore up their interior with the addition of Alana Smith, the 2025 Defensive Player of the Year, and Jessica Shepard. New York Liberty. Their shocking first-round playoff exit one season after winning a title meant the team needed to retool its roster and get healthy. New York was able to do both, returning Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and Brianna Stewart, plus adding three-time All-Star forward Satu Sabali. The Liberty also re-signed Bethany Hamilton, a former starter for the franchise and a glue player they will use on both ends of the floor. New York also added head coach Chris DeMarco, who should bring his experiences with individual skill development and systems to the team. Atlanta Dream. They had a disappointing end to their 2025 season. After a franchise best 30 wins in the regular season, Atlanta lost its first-round playoff series to Indiana. Still, the Dream remains confident in their core players and knew they wanted to run it back with the same group. Atlanta emerged from free agency victorious with 4 of its 5 starters, plus two-time All-Star Angel Reese, following a trade. That kind of feat is hard to pull off. Los Angeles Sparks. After missing the playoffs for the 5th consecutive season, things aren't looking so bad for the Sparks heading into the second season of Coach Lynn Roberts' tenure. Kelsey Plum, who was 4th in the league in scoring last season, returned to Los Angeles on a team-friendly deal, taking a discount to allow the Sparks to bring in other talented players. And the team took advantage of its cap space, bringing in Nneka Ogwumike, who won an MVP and led the Sparks to a championship in 2016. The team gave up Ricky Jackson in a trade to the Chicago Sky, but received two-time All-Star Ariel Atkins in return. The Sparks also reassigned Derica Hamby, added Erica Wheeler in free agency, and potentially got the steal of the draft by picking up South Carolina's Tanea Latson in the second round. Losers. Seattle Storm. The Seattle Storm will look completely different after losing 5 players who accounted for 67.5 points per game last season in Mika Ogwemke, Skylar Diggins, Brittany Skikes, Gabby Williams, and Erica Wheeler. The Storm returned Ezzy Magbor, 97.7% and Dominique Malanga, 7.7 points per goal, who will both have to take the next step offensively. Seattle signed Natisha Heitzman and Stephanie Dolson in free agency, drafted Awa Pham a 3rd overall, and acquired Flejad Johnson in a draft day trade with the Golden State Valkyries. Chicago Sky. The core of the rosters has changed for the 3rd consecutive season, and while the team has managed to add new players like Ricky Jackson, Natasha Cloud, and Skylar Diggins to help recoup losses like Ariel Atkins and Angel Reese, continuity matters when trying to win a championship. Chicago is also dealing with several injuries to begin the 2026 season, and that's just never good for a team that needs as much time to get as possible. Courtney Vandersnoot is still out after a season-ending ACI injury, and Azura Stevens and Dejano Carrington are also out with unclear injury timelines. Phoenix Mercury. Unlike last season, when the Mercury had 2 returning players, Phoenix has 9 back for this season, including MVP candidate Alyssa Thomas and Kalia Copper. But Phoenix wasn't able to re-sign Satu Sabali as the 3-time All-Star walked in free agency after 1 season. Sabali was the team's leading scorer last season, and Phoenix hasn't brought in a replacement for her production. Instead, Mercury General Manager Nick Uren said they will take a by-committee approach. That's easier said than done. The Mercury drafted international prospects Inez Pritchard-Grenell and Esther Ratke, who won't play this year, and signed French forwards Valerie Awal and Naomi Brochant, who are not with the team yet. The Portland Fire. In this expansion franchise's first season, there's simply not a lot on this roster that inspires optimism about the immediate future. It's largely a collection of players who are either young, unproven, or have failed to find a consistent role with previous WNBA teams. Perhaps the exception is Bridget Carlton, the team's highest-paid player at $1.19 million, but even she has yet to prove she can carry an offense, averaging 9.6 points per game in her best season with the Minnesota Lynx. The hope is a few of these players, from Haley Jones and Emil Engether to Megan Gustafson and Sing Sutton, can seize opportunities and have breakout seasons. You're listening to a reading of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 55 minutes after the hour. And now we've got one from golf. 10 reasons why Quail Hollow's Green Mile is golf's toughest stretch, from Adam Shippick. The nickname for E-Block at fictional Cold Mountain Penitentiary is the Green Mile, named for the lime green linoleum of the floor, replacing the traditional common phrase for death row, which is known as the last mile. At Quail Hollow Club in Charlotte, the Emerald Stretch, starting at the 16th tee and ending at the 18th green, has adopted the Green Mile name from the 1999 prison movie based on a Stephen King novel. It doesn't compare to the electric chair, but it's become the most brutal closing stretch on the PGA Tour. It's where this week's Trust Championship, a signature event with a 72-man field and a purse of $20 million, likely will be won or lost. George Cobb designed Quail Hollow, which opened in 1961, and Arnold Palmer touched things up in 1986 to lay the foundation for one of the noteworthy examples of parkland courses in the U.S. Most of what is seen on the ground today at what has been a regular entry in Golf Week's Best Top 100 Modern Courses list is the result of decades of work led by Tom Fazio, beginning in 1997. Fazio, for instance, revamped the 529-yard dogleg right par 4 16th, pushing it 50 yards to the left alongside a lake, bringing the water into play on both tee shot and notably on the approach. The tees to the over the lake 224-yard par 3 17th, its green surrounded short left and long by water, were flipped to the right side of the 16th green, and number 18, the toughest of them all, playing at a stroke average of 4.39 with 785 bogeys or worse in the last 5 years, was reintroduced as a monster 494-yard par 4 with a devilish little stream on the left running the length of the hole, bunkers choking the right side and false front green. Ever since, they have been the 3 hardest holes in relation to par when the pros pay their annual visit. In addition to being a regular tour stop since 2003, Quail Hollow has been the site of the 2017 PGA Championship won by Justin Thomas and 2025 PGA won by Scotty Scheffler, as well as hosted the 2023 President's Cup won by the American side. Let's go inside the ShotLink data numbers and investigate 10 facts that reflect what makes this 3-hole beast where good rounds go to Guy. Number 1, plus .90. That's how many over par the final 3 holes have played on the PGA Tour since 2003, making them the toughest 3 finishing holes. Last season, 16 to 18 played even harder, with an average of plus 1.13. Number 2, 1,888. Since 2003, there have been 1,888 balls in the water on this 3-hole stretch. A total of 1,002 of them have come at the 18th hole. Number 3, 17. That's how many times Brian Harman, who is in the field this week, and Phil Mickelson each deposited balls in the water at Green Mile. Vijay Singh is one back. Zach Johnson and D.A. Points rinsed 14 apiece. Number 4, 50.85. The Green Mile accounts for 23.78% of all bogeys, 39.35% of all doubles, and 50.85% of all triples or worse at Quail Hollow Club. Number 5, 3%. Since 2003, 833 different players at least one competitive round on Quail Hollow during the Truist Championship and 2017 and 25 PGA Championship. Of those 833 players, 25 are at par or better for their careers on these 3 holes, or 3% for all players. Number 6, plus 62. 2005 Truist Championship winner Vijay Singh has played the Green Mile at a combined 62 over par in his 50 rounds at Quail Hollow Club. Number 7, 29. Since 2003, that's how many players have managed to play holes 16 to 18 bogey-free in the same week, the last being Casey Lee and Harris English in 2023. Number 8, 20. That's how many birdies Rory McIlroy, a 4-time champion at Quail Hollow, has made at the Green Mile since 2010, the most of any player, and 5 more than his nearest competitor. Number 9, 47. That's how many bogeys or worse Lucas Glover, who is in the field this week, has made on the Green Mile, the most bogeys or worse of any competitor since 2003. Number 10, 8. That's how many putts have been holed from over 70 feet on the Green Mile during the ShotLink era. The longest putt made is 79 feet, 9 inches by Rory McIlroy on the 17th hole during the 3rd round in 2016. Now here's a story from college football. Kelly couldn't do it at LSU, but says Kiffin will win a title. From Blake Topmeyer and John Bryce. Brian Kelly was fired at LSU primarily because he didn't win a national championship, something his three predecessors on the Bayou did. Nick Saban won one in 2003, Les Miles won one in 2007, and Ed Orgeron won one in 2019. So will Kelly's successor in Baton Rouge bring the Tigers a national championship? Kelly joined USA Today Sports Seriously college football show this week and was asked, yes or no, will Lane Kiffin win a title at LSU? I think so, Kelly said. That wasn't yes. Here's why I would say yes. Okay, I think that they invested in NIL for him. They have given him the opportunity. There's a lot of good things moving in that direction. The recruiting classes are really in solid shape. And I think Lane's a really smart football coach. So I think he's in a really good place. And I believe because there's an investment in that NIL, he's going to be able to be Lane Kiffin. And that's important. You know, he's not going to take the 18-year-old kid and develop him, all the way through the ranks. And that's fine. And because that's what they wanted. I think with those things in place, he can win the national championship. And I'm sorry, that was a long answer, but that's the kind of how I feel. Kelly was asked earlier this month if he had any advice for Kiffin. Here's what he told USA Today Sports' John Bryce. Lane doesn't need advice, Kelly said. He's seen it from the NFL to SC to building a program. I don't think I'm telling him anything he doesn't know. The world we live in today, Michigan, just won a basketball championship with 5 transfers. You can do it, but there are so many moving pieces. I don't think he needs any advice. I think you just continue to be who you are. I think that's all you can be. People are going to judge you based upon what they think anyways. So just be Lane Kiffin. Now here's a baseball story for you. Skane's practically perfect and latest start, from Bob Nightingale. Pittsburgh Pirates Cy Young winner Paul Skenes, already producing the greatest start to a career of any pitcher in MLB history, came oh so close May 6th to carving out a page in the record book. Skenes, in one of the finest starts of his brilliant career, came so close to pitching a no-hitter. Really, he came so close to pitching a perfect game. I'd be lying, Pirates manager Don Kelly said, if it didn't go through my mind. Skenes instead had to settle for a brilliant eight-inning gem, allowing just 2 base runners in the Pirates' 1-0 victory over the Arizona Diamondbacks at Chase Field. I don't know what else to say, Kelly said, but he was unbelievable. Skenes was blowing his 98 miles per hour, 4-season fastball past the defensive backs. He had them swinging in air in his changeup. He had them diving at his sinker. They flayed away at his sweeper. Everything was working, generating 13 swings and misses, with 7 strikeouts on 3 different pitches. He threw 97 pitches, 65 for strikes. He retired 13 Diamondback hitters on 3 or fewer pitchers. He never threw more than 17 pitchers in a single inning and threw 9 pitchers or fewer in 3 innings. He barely broke a sweat. I thought there were times that every pitch was working, Skenes said, but they weren't at the same time, unfortunately. I was happy with it. We were executing our pitches. Skenes set down the first 15 Diamondback hitters he faced with such ease that only 3 balls were even hit to the outfield, and no one had to make more than a routine play. He retired the last 10 batters he faced, striking out the side in his final innings. It was just 2 batters with 2 outs in the 6th inning, with Lourdes Gurriel Jr. hitting a ball that traveled just 50.8 miles per hour off his bat, trickling to the right of Skenes and winding up an infield hit when Skenes' throw to first baseman Spencer Horwitz was wide of the bag. And Nolan Arendo, who attended the same high school as Skenes in Lake Forest, California, followed on the next pitch with a sharp single to left field. Other than that, Skenes was perfect in his 8 scoreless innings, 1 out less than his career high. No walks, no more hits, and no runs. I'm not going to get out there and tell him he's got to throw no-hitters every single time he goes out there, said Pirates second baseman Brandon Lowe, who produced the only run of the game with his first inning homer. But it's a lot of fun to be behind when he's rolling like he was tonight. Sure, Skenes, 5-2, 2.36 ERA, may have looked human at times this year. He gave up 5 runs in his 2026 season opener without getting out of the first inning, and 5 runs, 3 earned in his last start against the St. Louis Cardinals. Otherwise, he's been nothing short of spectacular. He is 5-0 with a .74 ERA in his 6 other starts, yielding just 22 hits and 3 runs in 28.1 innings, showing the baseball world why he's the finest pitcher in the game. Skenes, the defending National League Cy Young Award winner, continues to put together a resume that no one has ever accomplished. He now has a career 2.01 ERA, the lowest ERA by any pitcher, through the first 63 starts since at least 1920. He has made 22 scoreless starts, which are the most by any pitcher through 63 starts since at least 1901. The only thing missing in his glossy resume is a shutout or a 9-inning complete game. Yet after Skenes striking out the side in the 8th, but reaching 3 ball counts on the final 2 batters to do so, Kelly thought he was showing fatigue after 97 pitches. He summoned left-handed reliever Gregory Soto to close out the game. I was thinking about it, Kelly said, and it just looked like the 8th inning his command wasn't as good. His velocity ticked down a hair. He was getting ahead so early in the game, but in the last inning he didn't look like the command was as sharp. Skenes, who said he was unaware of his pitch count, didn't balk at the decision, saying he had confidence Soto would finish it out for a combined shootout. I wasn't worrying about it too much, Skenes said, so hopefully this year. Is there any doubt? Brian Kelly learned to pack and drive a U-Haul when fired. From Austin Courtright, John Bryce, and Blake Topmeyer. Just over 6 months ago, Brian Kelly found himself without a job after being fired by LSU midway through his 4th season with the program. What transpired shortly after being let go for the first time as a head coach was a series of firsts, like operating a moving truck. I never thought I'd be able to pack a U-Haul and drive it, Kelly told USA Today Sports during an interview with Sports Seriously. Listen, I'm feeling good about myself. There's no pictures anywhere, but in fact, I did. Kelly went 34-14 at LSU across parts of 4 seasons, although he never reached the college football playoff. He lost 3 of his last 4 games and was fired after the Tigers were walloped by Texas A&M 49-25 on the road on October 25th. The former Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Central Michigan, and Grand Valley State head coach made it clear he intends on coaching again. He noted, too, that his time away from coaching has helped him reflect on his firing and on his next opportunity should it arise. I want to be back coaching. That's what I love to do, he said. But this has been really good from that perspective, too, and nobody wants to hear that. There's no way athletic directors say, Coach Kelly, he's good at driving U-Hauls. Let's hire him. All of these things go to having a chance to be much more reflective, to have that chance to reconnect. I love being with my family. And so that makes you better as a person, and it allows you to have a better vision and clarity as you get the opportunity. Kelly said he can be selective about his next coaching job. LSU owes him $54 million from buying out his contract. While acknowledging that college football is in a rebuilding phase, he said he's focused on finding a fit that still values player relationship as a key factor. I think what's clear to me is I miss the relationships, Kelly said. I miss being with the players, and that to me is what drives me. That's my passion in wanting to do that. But for me, it's not necessarily about the right fit as much as where are we going to be with college football. That allows me to build these relationships with players. And so I think that's really important. And at the end of the day, for me to be at a place where relationships are still part of the process of being in college football. Since being fired, Kelly has downsized his house and figured out how to pay bills, he said. And while having extra time to take up normal activities like driving a U-Haul, he's enjoying his time off before getting back to baseball, or getting back into football. I think first and foremost, it's an opportunity to go from being in a hurry every minute of the day to being more reflective and being able to reconnect, he said. Look, I've been able to reconnect with my wife, which is awesome. After 35 years of being in the business, you're going in different directions. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for May 8th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, with episode number 5 of Ira Gershwin by Michael Owen. Following that, at 3 o'clock is the New York Magazine, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of the Buffalo News. Stay with us. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio reading serves people who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. From its broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, just north of Clinton Street. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those unable to read printed matter on their own. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. You're listening to your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter. People who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula are provided special reading radios. This year, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service marks almost 40 years on the air. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Service studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service website is nfradioreading.org. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555.
Volunteer Radio Reading Service now presents